People in nearly every culture around the world cook. In fact, it's one of humankind's most distinctive traits. The museum's special exhibition, Our Global Kitchen, Food, Nature, Culture, explores cultures and cooking, historic meals and markets, and the moments in our lives we mark with food. In all, taking visitors on a journey of growing, transporting, cooking, tasting, and celebrating food. During LunaFest, a two-day festival that took place at the museum in early 2013, the museum hosted a team from Kitchen Conversations, a project to document storytelling about food, and asked visitors to offer personal reflections about meals and cooking. Monique Scott, research associate in the Department of Anthropology and assistant director of cultural education, says that in these stories, visitors continue the museum's long tradition of collecting and sharing oral history.
We at the museum want visitors to not only be spectators of exhibitions, but to actually contribute their own stories to the exhibitions and contribute their own cultural stories to the anthropology they see on display. And we're very excited because these cultural stories breathe new life not only into our permanent anthropology exhibitions, but also to our amazing special exhibition, Our Global Kitchen, Food, Nature, Culture.
Glimpsing another culture's food traditions raises questions about one's own, as Glenn Walton of Dallas, Texas, explains.
I've had a chance to go to Mexico several times and experience that culture. Being that my wife is Hispanic and her family is from Mexico, getting to go there was a huge eye-opener and see how people live with food, especially going from a small village to the big cities and, eating in cafes and restaurants. And I got to experience a family function. Her grandfather is the hierarchy of the family, and we were there for his 80th birthday. We had a big family gathering. They slaughtered a sheep while we were there and cooked it, and lots of people came. And before that, we had gone to see where her aunt lives in a small city where they live as very much of a unit. Across the street was the butcher. And, someone would butcher a cow and it would spread among lots of different families instead of everybody having to live on their own. Her grandmother had a milking cow, and she milked a cow and gave milk to other people, and other people gave her tortillas. My wife's great-grandfather started a co-op in that area almost probably 80 years ago. And everybody would work the fields and everything, and then everybody got paid by, working it, and what they put in is what they got out. And I thought that was very neat. The sense of community hadn't gone away there, where we live, there is no sense of community. It's, you don't know the people that really live next door to you, and just how much the love of food was there. It wasn't just about, going and eating a fancy dinner. It was about, being a society, being a part of a community.
Everyone is born with some taste preferences. For instance, enjoying sweet foods is coded into most people's genes. But many other factors are also at work: anatomy, genetics, evolution, culture, marketing, and memory. Memories connected to food can be especially powerful, recalling perhaps a lost connection to one's homeland, as in this story from Kaylee Navarrete of Maspeth, New York.
I work at a Bolivian restaurant in Woodside, Queens, and it's all Bolivian food, which is a lot of potatoes, a lot of corn, steaks. We make like empanadas, and we have things called salteñas, which are it's really weird. It's like a soupy meat stew inside a empanada. There was a woman who came from California. She was literally crying, tearing, because she hadn't eaten our food in so long. It was really moving.
While people have been cooking for hundreds of thousands of years, cookbooks are relatively recent. Until the 1800s, widespread use of cookbooks was rare. Many people, including cooks, couldn't read, and recipes were traditionally passed along by word of mouth, often from mother to daughter. Berta Kropp from New York City grew up in Slovenia and learned a number of recipes from her mother. But as she explains, mastering these dishes after her family moved to the United States took hours of practice, even with a kitchen full of modern cooking utensils at her disposal.
I've watched my mother make all kinds of things, baking and cooking, and I've learned from her. And I've also learned from my mother-in-law. They're both fantastic cooks with no written recipes, no electric beaters, no electric, just wood-burning stoves. And they made the most wonderful food for us children. And I've learned, and I still make those same recipes, but with lots of help with all these electric appliances and knives and pots and pans that you wouldn't believe. And our parents had one pot and hardly any dishes and maybe a couple of forks, and we survived, and that's what I remember. And it's wonderful memories. My mother was very good at making apple strudel. Slovenia, this was like Austro-Hungarian Empire, and they cooked wonderful meals, with a lot of paprika and apple strudel and donuts and stews and all kinds of things that are not really very popular here in this country. For example, blood puddings and sausages, fresh from freshly killed pigs and cows and chickens, and it just was very, very tasty. Maybe because we were so hungry that it tasted so good. All the food that we had in Slovenia was grown by our father, and he was a farmer. We were farmers only. We had cows, we had chickens, and cats and dogs, and fields where we would plant vegetables, and pigs. And when we came to this country, we settled in an area in Queens where there was lots of our own people, and they had the butcher shops just like over there. You couldn't get away. So that was very wonderful to live in Queens like that, where we have all the things that we had on the other side. And my mother's cooking did not change. Only she was so happy. She says, look, I just turned this knob and there's a flame. I don't have to put wood in the stove. And look at this water. I can have cold water and hot water. I don't have to go out to the well. So I'm from that, era. And everything got easier and easier as the years go on. And now I make the same kind of food. And so we enjoy it very, very much. I still make the strudel that she made, and the nut bread and the donuts. Whenever I bake the apple strudel, it makes me feel closer to my mother. And I almost cry because she's gone now. She's gone from our lives. And she taught me these things, and she says, and she taught me, And I finally, after about 10 tries about 50 years ago, I finally got the dough so thin that you could read the newspaper through the sheets of dough, just like the phyllo dough now. That's what I make. I make it that thin. And my strudel, you cannot compare to the strudel that you know. My strudel is altogether different. It has layers. In between each layer, there's fruit. My strudel, each layer is like a jelly roll type layer with very, very thin layers. Each layer is filled with the fruit, the blueberries, the apples, the strawberries, everything that you want to put in there. And it's so unique. It's so very unique. You've never seen that, and it just tastes just absolutely magnificent.
As time goes by, traditions are tested, and some links weaken, as Berta Kropf has come to understand.
I have gatherings in my house on the holidays, and my relatives and my cousins, they come and they say, where is the potato salad? Where is the apple strudel? So if they ever come and I don't make it, they say, what's wrong with you? Where is this? That's why we came here. Because they themselves, their mothers did the same thing. And they didn't want to learn. They didn't want to learn it because it takes too much concentration and doing. And it takes, from beginning to end, a good 5 to 6 hours to complete that. I have a daughter. She loves to eat it, but this is a 5-hour project. And none of our nieces and nephews, they love it, they're interested, but they don't want to spend the 5 hours or all day sometimes because they have all their careers now. They're all college educated, and I was not. So I had the time to learn these things. When I was raising my daughter, my mother taught me. I had all the time. Now these young children, which is wonderful, they have their careers and they don't have time to do that. You know what I'm saying? So that's unfortunate, because I think I'll be the last one in our family who does this.
For some families, passing down recipes through generations is simplified by the fact that they're easy to adapt. Nguyen Cu of Hanoi, Vietnam, shared a recipe from her mother and a tip about improvising.
The recipe that I have been passed down by my mother is the spring roll. That is traditional Vietnamese food, and the ingredients is like tons of ingredients in the spring roll. My mother just like she made it so good that I just wanted to ask her for the recipe, and she just told me that, well, you just have to think about who is the one that you make the name this spring roll in Vietnamese. And second of all, you just like go to the market and then think about them, like if they like more seafood rather than like beef or than pork, and then you just increase the amount of that ingredient in that spring roll. And if you just put a lot of love in that spring roll, it's gonna taste good. That is the recipe I learned from my mother.
During the course of kitchen conversations, visitors shared many stories about mothers who relish passing down recipes to their children. Marianne Aiello of Westbury, New York, has a different storyline. She grew up in a large Italian-American family that gathered at her grandparents' home every Sunday for dinner. But while her own mother loved sharing favorite dishes with her family, for most of her life she held back the secrets of how she prepared them.
Over the last few years, my mother's gotten more and more willing to share the recipes with us because she's 84. Up until recently, she didn't want to share them. Now she's worried that when she dies, no one will know how to make them, so she's showing us how to do some of the recipes she never showed us to do before. And I actually have a lot of cookbooks. For years, I made her tomato sauce, and it never came out the way hers did, and finally she told me that she puts a little vermouth in her sauce, but she only told us that very, very recently. So she has all these little tricks that she's finally sharing with us, but nothing's written down. And the only way you can really learn is to do it with her, because even if she tells you orally, sometimes she skips a step. But when she's actually doing it, she doesn't skip the step.
Cooking is a dynamic expression of human creativity. We transform ingredients, giving rise to a fantastic diversity of recipes, tools, techniques, scents, and cuisines. Even so-called signature dishes may come in hundreds of varieties. Stephanie Rothschild of New York City tells a story about her brother's revelation about chicken soup.
I'm Jewish, and chicken soup traditionally in Jewish lore is yellow. In my family, the chicken soup is red. So my great-grandparents came from Lithuania. My grandmother made her family's chicken soup recipe, which was red, which had tomatoes in it. When my brother was at Harvard, he belonged to, I guess it was Hasty Pudding Cooking Club, and they took turns doing traditional meals. And so he wanted to do a traditional Jewish meal, and he was in the middle of exams or whatever, he had papers to write, and so my mother suggested that she tell him how to make the matzah balls, but that he could go to a Jewish deli and get the soup. So he made the matzah balls, and he went to the deli, and he called my mother hysterical, and he said, "Something's wrong. I went to serve it, and the soup is yellow." He had never seen yellow chicken soup before.
Throughout time, various spices and foods, from chili peppers to citrus fruit, have been used as medicines. Kiss Ramturet, a museum employee who grew up in Trinidad, shares her go-to remedy.
I'm excited to share this recipe with everyone because it worked very well for the flu, cough and cold. This is the turmeric. You boil like half a teaspoon with about this amount of ginger. You shred it. You shred the ginger, then you put half a teaspoon turmeric. You put like half a gallon of the milk. Then I put this, which is an Indian spice. cardamom.
Oh, cardamom, yeah.
You put it in the milk. You get everything ready in the milk before you put it on, like the boiling process. You know, nutmeg. I take the grater. I grate the nutmeg like only so much because it's so high in flavor. Then I put cinnamon stick. I drop like 1 or 2. And you know, clove. And you bring it to boil. You boil it down like in medium heat, but you have to stand by the pot because you know it rises and it can make a mess all over the stove. And you boil it down for 10 minutes and it clear your sinus. It bring all the nasal drip. Is like you need to go to the sink and blow your nose, you know, because you start with this nasal drip. You know, it clear your sinus. It works very well for the sinus. All these stuff work very well for the cold and the cough. If you have the cough and it just started, it's gone after you drink this. It works very well. You don't need to go to the doctor. It is like a local medicine. If you have sore throat, it works very well for the sore throat also.
If food soothes the body, it also speaks to the heart, evoking strong memories of feeling loved. Michael Epps, a security guard at the museum, tells of the strong associations of one particular meal.
It's a childhood memory of my mother. She cooks my favorite dish, which was chicken and dumpling. And from my childhood all the way up to my older years, every time when I went to visit her, I always knew that she was going to have it for me whenever I came to visit. It's my favorite dish. My aunts make it, my cousin makes it, but nothing tastes like mom chicken and dumplings. It's stewed chicken, like it's stewed, and then it gets that little gravy in it. Then you put the dumplings inside that gives it that flavor, and I always liked it. My mother's not with us anymore, but I knew if there's a heaven and she was there, when I got there, she would have a pot of the chicken and dumplings waiting for me as soon as I got there.
Thanks for joining us for Kitchen Conversations. The special exhibition, Our Global Kitchen, Food, Nature, Culture, is open at the American Museum of Natural History through August 11th, 2013. If you'd like to share an image of what food means to you, whether it's the strangest meal you'd ever had, or remembering your family gathered around the dinner table, post your photo to Instagram with the hashtag #CelebrateFood and include a brief caption. Your photo could be selected to be featured in the exhibition. For more information about the exhibition, visit amnh.org.